Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the ResponseABLE Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
Before we dive into the episode, I want to share my free guide to managing our kids' meltdowns. We know that meltdowns are normal, but they still suck and can be ridiculously triggering. This 4-step free guide will help you break the cycle of reactivity and help you get through the meltdown without snapping yourself. Don't join your kid in the tantrum. Grab my free guide and learn how to manage meltdowns like a pro. Head to responsablepparenting.ck.page/meltdown, or just go and click the link in my show notes and get your guide today. Okay, let's get to the episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ResponseABLE Parenting Podcast. I am your host, Becky Jennings. I am thrilled to be here. I love podcast days. I just feel so energized and alive. I always feel like after I record a podcast or I listen to a podcast, I just show up in such a different way for my children. And it just really connects me to my goal. It keeps my vision on track. And I am just really grateful that I get to have this platform, connect with you. It's deeply meaningful to me. So thank you so much for showing up and listening and talking to me about the points that resonate with you. It just makes me so happy. So if you ever want to connect on the podcast, if you have feedback, if you want to be a guest on my podcast, please let me know. I definitely want to add that into my podcast structure, is where I'm interviewing you. We're talking in real time about what's going on for you and your family, and we can really flush out the situation. What is happening in your household is happening in so many households. Trust me, we often feel alone, but there are so many people right in the thick of it with you. So please reach out, connect with me. I will put a link in the show notes to talk to me about the podcast. And I'm just really excited to add that part to this. So I apologize in advance. I tried to do this on the lunch hour, but in fact, we have the tree trimming crew down the street. So if you hear any additional noise, I apologize in advance. But today we're talking about one of my favorite things, which is owning our own part of the problem. And this is just such a gift that we can give our children. It is such a part of teaching our children how to be in a mutual, respectful, loving dynamic. It teaches our children that they have value. It adds so much collateral to their self-esteem. And I just truly love this part of what we can give to our children, and that is owning our part. Owning our mistakes is vital. It's such an essential part of modeling how we want our children to act in conflict. If we don't model owning our own stuff, then we're just constantly putting ourselves on this pedestal, and we are just an unattainable vision of adulthood. It's just so unfair. If our children don't see us making mistakes and then owning the mistakes and repairing and making the next step in order to do better the next time, then what are they to go off of when they're in a similar conflict? What skills are they witnessing and learning and absorbing? They don't have the foundation. So it is actually a critical teaching step for us to be vulnerable, own it, and talk to them about us owning it. I think oftentimes it's very easy for us to need to prove that we were right to our children. And I often have to say to myself, is it worth being right over being connected? Is it more important for me to prove my point, justify, say I'm right, than it is to lose connection with my child? And I'm constantly reframing that because my son and I are very similar and we butt heads a lot. And he'll do something that doesn't feel great, and I will do something that doesn't feel great. And I have an instinct to make him more aware of what he did that didn't feel great versus saying, you know what, I did something too, and I didn't like how I did that. I think one of the critical parts of owning our stuff is not justifying why we did it. Acknowledging that we did it is enough. If I said, something along the lines of, I am sorry I yelled at you. You had just pushed me so far that I snapped, right? I'm now no longer owning my part. I'm telling my son that it's his fault for the reason why I responded the way I did. Now, instead, I could say, you know what? We were having a conflict and I didn't do a good job in staying calm. That's on me. I'm still working on feeling those feelings in my body and doing a better job at supporting myself and calming down before I start to speak. And I do apologize that I yelled at you. See, now it's none of his fault. I'm not telling him that he is the cause of my frustration. He is the cause of my unrest internally. Well, that might be true, right? When we're in these situations with our kids, they are triggering. It is frustrating, but they are also acting completely from their feeling centers in their brain. They do not have their prefrontal cortex fully developed until mid 20s. And even as fully grown adults, we still, with a fully developed prefrontal cortex and reasoning center and filtration of logic and all of that stuff, our feeling center activates first, always. That's just how humans were designed. We are designed to react from a feeling place first. And only then, many seconds later, does our prefrontal cortex click online and allow us to make better filtered choices. So to have the expectation that our child will not be acting from their feeling center and they will strictly be acting from their logic center and following our perfectly outlined steps of how to handle conflict is just so unrealistic. And so, yes, I will 100% stand next to you and say, gosh, children can be so frustrating. And yes, when they are doing XYZ and being rude and it feels like an attack, it can feel like they are doing it to us. And it can feel like their behavior is the cause of our frustration. So it is so easy to say, what you did is the reason why I acted like this. I get it. It's a reframe that we have to constantly work on as parents when we are modeling how to handle conflict resolution, is to just simply own our part without passing the buck to them, without passing the blame, and without adding that extra layer so that they feel kind of crummy, even though we're apologizing. It's not by adding that, they're not learning the lesson. They're not saying, oh, my parent owned it, that's how I should do that in the future. All they're hearing is that they weren't good. All they're hearing is that they messed up. All that does is validate a storyline that they're probably already creating in their head about good enough and their behavior, as how it relates to that. So taking a second to recognize your child's developmental age and stage, taking a second to understand that they are actively reacting from their feeling and primitive centers in their brains, and they don't have the logic. They don't have a multi-step process lined out for how to respond to conflict. And when we can do that, we can say, from our position as the parent who is trying to teach these lessons, we can model to them owning our part, owning our reactivity, and simply leaving it as that. There are so many parts to repair that I love so much, but this is a huge thing that I'm working on, is to just own it and leave it. Own it, leave it at that. We don't need to add all the extra stuff. Owning what is true for you in the moment, owning it. It's so easy to make it their fault. But that does nothing for the connected relationship, and that does nothing to teach your child a sense of self, to feel good about themselves, and to actually give them the skills to do better. Shame is never going to be a good teacher. And I think one of my next favorite parts, so you own your part and then let them know how you're going to work on it in the future, right? It's not just owning it and then it's gosh, I really do truly hate teaching kids to say I'm sorry over with everything and then teaching the other child to respond, it's okay, but it's not. My kids a couple days ago, they were in a full battle and both of them were hitting and punching on the couch and stuff. And my older son came around and he said to my younger, I am sorry. And my younger went, no, just like recoiled and was like not ready to accept it. And my older son said, you have to say you're sorry and it's okay. And I had to stop in the moment and say, actually, buddy, if somebody's not ready to receive your apology, that's okay. They will come around and they will be able to work it out. But at this moment, he's still too activated to get it. Meanwhile, few minutes later, they did come back around and both of them said, I'm sorry for what I did. And they both genuinely meant it. It wasn't a rehearsed statement. As we know, it takes a village to raise our children, but more and more, we are doing the entire job on our own. And that stops today. I have created a parent community app focused directly on giving you essential support tools. The ResponseABLE Parenting Community Group is available now. In this community, you will have more parenting strategies right at your fingertips. You'll have direct access to me and my coaching every month in our live Q&As, where you can bring your burning parenting questions and get my real-time support. I will host monthly exclusive workshops, facilitate weekly skill-building exercises, and more. This space is designed to meet you where you are at on your parenting journey. It's a judgment-free zone with parents and caregivers who are learning and growing right alongside of you. For less than $1 a day, you will have access to exclusive parenting content and coaching. I cannot wait to be a bigger part of your parenting journey. Head over to ResponseABLEParenting.com to join today. Enter promo code PODCAST to receive $10 off your first month. That's PODCAST for $10 off your first month. I think a critical step that we also are missing in this whole thing is when we own it and we leave it, we actually truly leave it. We don't have this expectation that and the other person is going to respond in a way that makes us feel better about what we just said. We don't expect it's okay because it's might not be okay for them still. They might still be processing it. And I think it's the owning it and leaving it and dropping the expectations that is critical. And I think another critical step is saying how you will work on changing it in the future. Giving your child the feedback that I know this was wrong. It is something I'm actively working on. And this is how I'm going to work on it in the future is just so helpful. And then letting them know you can call me out when I'm not working on that. If I'm not showing you how I'm going to take that next step, if I fall back into an old pattern, call me out because I am actively working on it and I want to do better. So I'm going to need your help and letting me know when I mess up. I think that's so important. I really do. And I don't think it has anything to do with respect. I think it's actually showing our children a really beautiful way of owning your part. this whole podcast, owning your part and doing better, showing up for the people that you care about in a bigger way. And a lot of that takes accountability. And just because your child is younger than you and you've spent more years on this earth doesn't mean that you can't be accountable to them. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for listening to the ResponseABLE Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.